Good morning, good morning, good morning, and welcome to another episode of On the Couch with Creatives. I say good morning because I'm here in the UK, but good afternoon or good evening if you're anywhere else in the world. I'm Melanie Perry.
And I'm Julie Hyde-Mew.
And this is On the Couch with Creatives. Fans and followers of the show will know that we're part of the Creatives Group, a private network for creative professionals across the globe. Together, we support you so you can create at your best, connect you with like-minded individuals, and therefore grow your creative business. If that sounds like a good idea to you and you'd like to find out more about joining our growing network of creative professionals, please don't hesitate to contact us after the show. But, as I say, this is On the Couch. So, Julie, who do we have on the couch today?
Well, most creatives are told all their lives that they're no good with numbers and shouldn't even try. And on the couch today, we have SARA-JAYNE Slocombe, who is on a mission to change all that. She helps creatives stay self-employed by using their numbers to help their businesses thrive. So let's hear more about how she supports those who find dealing with their finances rather confusing. Hello, SARA-JAYNE. Welcome to On the Couch.
Hello, Julie and Melanie. It's a pleasure to be here.
It's lovely.
Well, SARA-JAYNE, let's kick off with how the creative mind can sometimes, not always, but sometimes find dealing with numbers rather difficult. Is there truth in that creative minds are chaotic when it comes to numbers?
I don't believe so. I believe it's the conditioning that we've had since very early years. We are taught from an early age that we are either left-brained or right-brained, and there's this dichotomy, and you can't do both. And I don't believe it's true at all.
It's funny you should say that, because it's only when I was at school, I hated maths. And I think that had a lot to do with having diabolical maths teachers all the way throughout my life. I excelled at English, but that's because I had brilliant English teachers that I just adored, and I just excelled at that. And I only really got to grips with numbers when I was starting my own business, and I had to know them and I could see how they worked in a particular thing. And they started to make a bit more sense. Like, okay, I can kind of manage this. And okay, thankfully, I don't have to add it up myself. The spreadsheet does it all automatically. But it's still, even though I've got a little bit more into it since having my own business, the thought of maths and numbers still breaks me out into a cold sweat before I have to sit down and deal with it.
Yeah, it's because of how we're taught. I'm convinced we're taught this rote thing, and we're taught to memorize it, and we're not taught to understand it. I think the creative brain is looking for connections. It's looking for how things fit together, how things are expressed in different ways. And if you get into higher level mathematics, which I did, you find that there's actually quite a lot of creativity in it. But at the lowest levels in, primary school and so on, we are just taught in this rote way by teachers who often don't understand it themselves. And then that's why. Because we have such a shortage of STEM teachers. But yeah, and then that's what it causes. It causes people who break out in cold sweats. It causes people who swear they can't do any of it, and they can. And so that's why that's what my focus is to try to empower people and say, yes, you can. And then once you can, it empowers you to do so much more.
Would you say you bring clarity and calm to creators by telling the story behind the numbers in an accessible and easy way? How exactly do you do that?
Charts and graphs are really helpful, but it's about out of your bookkeeping or your accounting or your social media analytics or anything, what you're getting is a wall of numbers most of the time. But the story behind the numbers is what has increased, what hasn't. So, and why. Are you spending more on advertising? Was that a conscious decision? Is that actually in line with what your current goals are? Are you spending less on software. Was that a conscious decision? Is that in line? And it's those stories, those kind of stories that the bookkeeping really helps with. And then once you say, okay, yes, I am spending more in this area, but it is in line with my goals, then you are calm and clear about it. You aren't just looking at year on year, here's one number that's higher than the other, and you don't really understand why, and you're panicking, right? Or one number that's lower than the other, depending on what those numbers are. But yeah, it's about diving in and finding out what's really happening and making sure that's in alignment. And if it's not, fixing it earlier and not waiting for the annual reports.
That's it. You don't want to just be in a muddle with your, doing your tax return, do you? It's like having it in control from day one. And it's one thing that, as I say, I do, but I leave it to the last minute. And Julie's always saying to me, Melanie, can you update the financials, please? Because I was like, oh, yeah, yes, okay, I'll put it in the 20. Because it's a
That's
thing
not
that I
saying
need to start
much.
doing.
I mean, really, I'm not exactly on top of it.
But I think that you're right, Sarah-Jayne, in a lot of ways that it needs to be taught differently in schools. Because my son, I had a conversation with my son's teachers a couple of days ago, and maths is the area. He's doing all right in it, but his focus just isn't there. And these days, apparently, they have whiteboards that they do it on, but they took his away because he was just drawing on it. And she said, he was creating these wonderful creations on this board, but that's not what he was supposed to be doing. And I was having a conversation with my husband the other night. I was thinking, if there was a way that they could get him engaged with what it means, like practically, because my son, he's very good at puzzles and things like that. And he like you were just talking about, Sarah-Jayne, he likes to see how it fits together. And I think just numbers on a page that don't really mean anything, if he could kind of have it in his head, he's very creative. If he could make it make sense in his mind, he'd do a lot better with it. If he could get interested in it as a part of a story, or I don't know, it would just help him no end. But the way things stand, he's just like, yeah, no, whatever.
I'm reading a book right now called The Maths That Made Us, and I've forgotten the author, unfortunately, but it's really readable. I highly recommend it. He's written it for a general audience all the way through people who are interested in mathematics. And it is telling the stories behind. So he starts with arithmetic and he goes through the different subjects, but he's telling the stories behind why did we invent logarithms and what have they done for us. It's not about, how do you actually do a logarithm, which you get in your mathematical textbook, or any other subject, all the other subjects that are covered, and there are a lot. But yeah, it's brilliant, and that's the way that it should have been taught, should be being taught. Is then you get more interested in it. Then you're like, oh, okay, this is really useful, and this is how it's used, and so on. Even if you don't at the beginning, obviously, understand how to do that, it brings more interest. So yes, I have quite a soapbox about how mathematics is taught.
I'll tell you a story about what Melanie was referring to. I took maths right up until my last day at school. Most of the time, I didn't understand a thing. I really didn't. It was just squiggles on a board. And strangely enough, I was told that I had a mathematical brain and that I should become a nuclear physicist. Well, I've never laughed so hard in my life. But once I left school, years later, I read The Great Escape, the book on the Great Escape. And they worked out those tunnels, Tom, Dick, and Harry, the tunnels that they dug to escape from the German concentration camps. And they worked it out how deep they had to go, how long they had to dig to pop out in the forest rather than right with, in the no man's land where the guards could see them. And they used trigonometry to work that out. And they were pretty good. I think 2 out of 3 of them actually popped out in the forest. One didn't, and that's when they were discovered. But when they started discussing how they were going to work out how to dig, how deep, how long, and they used trigonometry, basic trigonometry, a little bulb went off in my head. And I thought, why didn't my math teacher tell me that?
Exactly.
It was a picture, it was a story. So, there is a creative way of presenting mathematics, arithmetic, mathematics to people, whether they're creative or not.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. Yes, and that's so. Yeah, when you've asked how I tell the story behind the numbers, and it is to my clients, and it is about finding the stories that rely less on numbers and more on words, basically.
So what do you do when a client comes to you and says, right, my finances are in a mess, I have no idea what I'm doing? You grab them by the scruff of the neck, and what do you do with them?
Well, I work 100% remotely, so there's no scruff of the neck involved. You'll be relieved to know. But I have a long conversation with them at first, and I find out all about their business and what's going on. And then I need to also know what they need to know, because that varies a lot from one business to another, one person to another, even if there are multiple directors. And then we find out, are you set up on software? Do you need to be set up on software? Do you want to do it yourself? Do you want me to do it for you? Because I have those two services. If you need to be set up on software, they all do the same thing in the end. So we're talking about Xero or QuickBooks or Sage or others. There are hundreds, literally. And they all do the same thing in the end. But what you need is one that meshes as well as possible with your business, so it will integrate, it will connect with the things that you're already using, like your bank and your payment processors and so forth, so that it automatically brings that information through, which saves you the data entry, and it saves you from making mistakes when you type the stuff in. So it saves you time, and it saves you more time later to fix it. But you also need it to work with your head, because they all have very different user interfaces. So what you're looking for is a software that where your brain matches as closely as possible to the developer's brain, really. And so what was intuitive for them is intuitive for you. And so for that, you just have to kind of play around with a few. And so I walk them through, I show them a few, I narrow it down, and then we go through a few and they pick. And then we get to entering, and once it's all caught up, we can actually start talking about what the stories behind the numbers are. So I have a monthly or week or quarterly check-in, which is a Zoom call. And we will talk about where they are, what they're doing, what their plans are in their business. They'll tell me all of that first. And then I will talk about what their numbers are saying and any hurdles I can see for their plans and things that they might want to consider. But yeah, we just have a conversation.
I think that's a really important point, actually, Sarah, is when you're using software, you need to pick the one that you are going to be more closely aligned to, because again, if you hate this sort of thing, when you do get software, you want it to be as easy. Well, for me, for example, I want it to be as easy and as intuitive as possible, and I just want to press a button and it kind of does it, or I take a picture on my phone and scan my receipt and it does it, and I don't really have to worry too much about the stuff. All I want to do is look at the end kind of numbers, right? I'm doing this and it's costing me this, and I'm doing this and I'm getting this in, or whatever. And so you can clearly and easily identify those areas where, or should I be spending that much on that, or should we be trying something else? Is that working? Is that not working? I'm not. It depends what I'm doing, but I'm not a very detail orientated. I'm like a top level person. I like to know the top stuff, and I'm an ideas person, and I'm off with the fairies a lot of the time, and I have to be kind of dragged back down to earth to look at stuff. And if it's really long and detailed, and even with writing, and I say, if you put a technical report in front of me, I'd read the first 2 pages and then I'd be zoned out, and you'd never get me back. So I like things that are in my face, easy for me to grasp, because I can't you know, unless I had someone doing that for me, it'd be amazing to do that for me, because I can't drill into that little detail. Nothing sends horror down my spine quicker than me sitting in a room and having to go through data. Even the word data makes me shiver.
How did you discover that you had a niche market when it came to getting clients who were creative and who were more than likely going to be all at sea when it came to their even basic bookkeeping?
Actually, it worked the other way around, to be honest. I picked a niche. I thought about who I wanted to work with. After I'd been in business for about a year, I came across the advice to niche, and I thought long and hard about the kinds of people that I like to work with, and I like to work with people who are happy to give things a go. So, Melanie, you were just talking about your head being off in the clouds and wanting to just try things. And see, if you were my client, my role would be then to say, okay, you tried this, it worked, it was profitable, and then check in with you. Did you like it? Or you tried that and it didn't work, it wasn't profitable. If you liked it, then we'll see, what you can do to make it more profitable. But yeah, I want to work. I wanted to work, I still want to work with people who are happy to try things, give things a go. That's the kind of energy of people that I want to be around. I was around too many people at that time who are like, oh no, this is the way that we've always done it, and we can't do anything different ever. And I don't like to be around those kind of people. So this is why I was drawn to creatives. Since I've been here, and I've been around creatives in various degrees all my life as well. Of course, we all are, and parents and so forth. But creatives in business, so like the creatives networking group versus any other box standard networking group with a mix of people, and there's a much more can-do vibe to the whole thing. Let's figure this out and so on, and so yeah, it's that. Did I answer?
I think we're all, that's because we're all slightly crazy, to be quite honest. I was watching on Disney Channel the other day a program called Industrial Light and Magic, and it was basically how the company was formed, and they were the guys that did all the special effects. How they started was making the special effects on the first Star Wars movie, and then it grew from there. And George Lucas, I didn't realise, I knew George Lucas did Star Wars, but I didn't realise how instrumental he was in bringing about the digital era of movie making. And it's kind of Pixar and Adobe kind of started with George Lucas, and they developed because he wanted everything to go digital when he saw the opportunities from the very, very early Pixar days. And on that documentary, the team that worked on Star Wars, nothing had been done like that before. And one of the first guys who worked on Star Wars, there was a bit of a falling out between him and George Lucas because he spent half the budget before they'd even shot any film on making the models and stuff. But they were constantly in this battle of how can we get this? So George Lucas had a very definite idea in his head. This is how I want it to look. This is what I want it to be. And then they had to come up with solutions. And at that time, there was nobody doing it, and they built cameras. Some of these guys that were from, engineering school, they built cameras and they built rigs and they built the models and they engineered their way through Star Wars, and it blew my mind. And it was just like, nobody said, as you said, oh no, that's impossible. That can't be done. George Lucas apparently would always say, I want to do this, and just say, and they would say, oh well, and so just think about it. Just think about it. And then he'd go away. And of course, the creative brain is thinking about it and it's like, oh, now I've got a solution and we're going to do this. And I think creatives are, as you say, very can-do people. We'll try anything at least once.
Absolutely.
That's why you said when you said that being in a networking group with other creatives across the creative industries, at our networking events or when we start talking to each other individually, the ideas just start sparking. It's quite amazing.
Yeah, it's very, very high energy, a lot. And I think that's a good thing. But sometimes we do need sensible people like you, Sarah-Jayne, who can actually sort of, let's bring it back in the room.
Bring it down to ground. So
Yeah.
what do you actually call yourself? Do you call yourself a business consultant, a creator? I don't want to call you a creative bookkeeper because that makes you sound rather dodgy, doesn't it? What do you call
This is the wrong connotation, yes. No, I'm calling myself a mathematician, a bookkeeper, and a coach. I'm bringing more than just what a bookkeeper or an accountant would bring. I'm bringing an entirely different perspective on numbers. So this was when I started to study bookkeeping. You start by learning double entry bookkeeping, and it's an entirely different way of looking at numbers than anything else I've done before. So it took some time to get my head around it. And but now I bring my mathematical background of saying, oh, look, how can we expand just this set of business numbers? How can we apply that? So I lead with mathematician, bookkeeper. And if you sign up for my Done With You stuff, then I'm coaching you through getting your numbers sorted. So,
well, that brings us to, how do people get hold of you?
I have a website, bookkeepingformakers.co.uk. I'm on Instagram. I'm at Bookkeeping for Makers. On Facebook, which is Amethyst Raccoon. I'm on LinkedIn, and I'm on YouTube. You can get me in all the places.
All over the place.
Have you ever had like a really diabolical client that you've managed to get under control, that when you started out you thought this is never going to work in a million years, but then it did? Have you ever had, because that would probably be me. If you haven't, I'll be your first one.
That would probably be Melanie.
No, I've never had anybody I didn't think I could help. Thankfully, not yet. I don't think that person exists, but I have had clients who have. So my very first client was one who had experienced a great deal of growth in a very short space of time, which is good, but then things start breaking and things start getting overlooked. And they brought me on board for data analysis and a number of other things, and it grew into bookkeeping. And when that happened, I started looking at their sales invoices, and I realized that because of the chaos, they hadn't realized that their clients hadn't paid several £1,000s, and I managed to recover £18,000 of that. So that boosted their income that year by about 20%. But yeah, I put in systems and processes so that it didn't happen again. And just to make it generally easier for everybody in that organization.
Yeah.
But no, I don't think the client who's hopeless exists.
You wait. No, but my ears pricked up then, like data analysis, because again, as I said, that just sends shivers down my spine. You know, we're going through, but you need it. And I've heard horror stories of, especially people in not just the creative industries, but the well-being industries as well. People who are really heart-centered businesses, I think, struggle with the numbers because, one, we don't like to ask for it, and two, we want to just get, we live in a, like a lot of actors, we live in a utopia of, oh, we just give everything away for free and it's all going to be lovely, we just live in this lovely little fairyland. But obviously you do actually have to pay the bills, and you do have to eat and things like that, and things have to happen in a certain structured way. But of course we don't want to do that. We just want to go, yeah, we'll just do this, and yeah, I'll help you do this, and I'll help you do that. And,
It's boring.
No, you don't have to pay me for this. You don't have to pay me. I'll do it for free. A lot of us get suckered into that.
Yeah, as I say, exposure doesn't pay the bills. But yeah, we are. It is hard. We have such a conditioning in our society where we want to shy away, and it's even worse in the UK, where we want to shy away from numbers and talking about money and so on. And so we don't want to ask our clients to pay our bills, and we don't want to ask for payment to begin with. Where possible, I find that price lists really help with that. If you just have it out there on your LinkedIn or on your website or whatever, or if you just incorporate it, if somebody queries, emails you and asks you about doing something, if you can produce it, and it can just be from prices. I know a lot of things are going to be how long is a piece of string, but yeah, find somebody you really love in the money mindset space is what I would say, and work on those underlying issues. We all have them.
Priceless. That's a very good idea, because you don't have to have those embarrassing conversations about money.
And it's not so embarrassing when you've already broached it with the price list. You may still have to say, okay, and my price for this particular project is going to be this amount, but it's like easier.
Yeah. I mean, I have, for my video business, I don't have prices on my website because a lot of things that I do are bespoke. So what I tend to do is people will ask me for a quote. I will then provide the quote. And then I also have a terms and conditions document. So there are additional things that people might want to be put into the project, like stock footage or music, things that require licenses and blah, blah, blah. So in the terms and conditions is where I have, this is the standard quote. If you accept it, that's great. But if you go over and above that and you want this, and this, it's going to cost you this much extra. So that, again, I don't have to have that conversation. And then if I do have that conversation, then I'm like, oh, I was like, well, you've signed the terms and conditions. If you haven't read it, it's not my problem, but you're not going to get all this stuff. And that has helped me over the years avoid project creep as well, because, it can be very easy for you to be on something as a creative and somebody will say to you, oh, can you just put this in, or can you just change that, or can you just, and you suddenly are doing loads and loads of edits, and then that sucks your time, and you suddenly actually, they've had quite a lot of technical skill here, and I haven't compensated myself for it. And if you've priced your project low to start with because you're starting out or whatever, you suddenly actually are in those negative numbers, really, but you don't want to think about that, so that's helped me. And I got another filmmaker lady who's just absolutely lovely, and she helped me draft my terms and conditions, and I felt a lot more confident, and I've had a lot less stress having that. I mean, it's only something little, but it's a guideline, and I haven't had to have too many. But there's only been, I think, once or twice I've ever had to chase for payment, and I have felt peculiar about it. But then I thought, no, they've signed the terms and conditions. They can't have a go at me for chasing up the money, because they know when it's due, and they have paid the chase. But it is horrible when you have to ask people for money, because we are, especially as you say in England, we're conditioned again. You mustn't talk about money. It's not the thing.
And this is one of the advantages of software like Xero or QuickBooks, is that you can send it from the software, and you can automate follow-ups if they haven't paid yet. So it relieves some of that pressure. Or you could obviously outsource both bookkeeping to raise the invoice and send it, and credit control to somebody else if it's really an issue. But yeah, I'm really glad the terms and conditions have helped. That's a really good idea.
What other top tips do you have for creators when it comes to dealing with their finances?
I'm sorry, I missed the first part of that. What other
top tips do you have?
For dealing with their finances? Do it little and often. Do it just as long as it takes you to just before you get fed up. If you're service-based professional, you can often get your bookkeeping done in just an hour a month. It shouldn't take, and once after the beginning where you figure out what you're doing. But yes, do it little and often. The more frequently you do it, the more up-to-date your numbers are, the more helpful they can be. Track based on what so number 2 would be track based on what you're doing. If you have different arms to your business, if you have different projects, which most creatives do, track your sales and expenses according to those, so that you can find out later if they are profitable. If they aren't profitable and you can deep dive into those numbers, you can figure out how to make them more profitable. If they are profitable, and great, you know what to continue with. And use all of the visualizations that any software can do for you. So if you're using spreadsheets, Excel has charts and graphs. Most of the accounting softwares will also provide charts and graphs. Use these to help you really see what's going on and the trends. You're more interested in trends much of the time than you are really in absolute numbers, at least when you're trying to improve your business.
I like that, because I'm much more likely to get it if I see a row of 3, say, pie charts rather than 3 columns of numbers, because they'll just merge into one and I won't see it.
Funny enough, I like the numbers. I like to see the rows and the figures, especially if they're going up.
Yes, but if you get it on a graph that's going up, you get the same idea, but you can see better that it's going up like this or it's going up like this.
Yeah. I've never thought about that before, actually, using the graphs part of Excel. And you're right, they all have those, don't they? So I think that's a really top tip. I like that. I'm going to start doing that. I'm going to start putting ours in a chart, Julie, once I work out how to do it.
That sounds very pretty. That sounds very pretty, Melanie. I look forward to seeing it.
Yeah, it will be psychedelic colours like our background, and it'll be like neon pink.
Loves a pink. She's a real Barbie.
I want to see that film. I want to see it. So,
Sarah-Jayne, this is the time of the chat on the couch where we actually delve into your mind. So while Melanie's getting out her cards, her beautiful cards, just to say that there's no right or wrong answer. Just say whatever comes into your mind.
Yes, our cards, our values journal cards, so our audience can get to know you a little bit better.
Yeah, it's called Values Jam, and basically every card has a value, and you discuss it, each value in a creative way, and let those neurons fire in your brain.
Right, now let's see. Okay, I'll run my finger along, and then you just say stop when you want me to stop.
Stop.
Right, what have we got? What have we got? Oh, this is quite a good one. Talking about numbers. It's me. Okay, you picked safety. There's safety in numbers, Sarah-Jayne, apparently. Terrible. Right. Okay. So, what does safety mean to you? What does it look, feel, and sound like?
Being wrapped in my husband's arms.
Oh.
Oh.
Being in, just looking outside at the rain falling down, being in a safe, dry, warm home that I'm welcome in. It smells like cinnamon.
Oh.
And what would safety taste like? I once had water that was brought from a really special place, and unfortunately I can't remember the details. Somebody else had been and brought this water, and it was the purest, cleanest water I have ever had in my life, and it's that. That's safety.
I love that. Pure, clean water. Yeah, I like that.
Oh, shame for Melanie. She's got a cold, looking like Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer.
To me, people. Yes, not a good look for me today. Not a good look for me today. I do apologise, and hopefully everyone's been able to understand what I've been saying through my snot and everything else. Excuse me.
Yes, we've heard you fine.
So yeah, if anyone says to me, "What does it smell like?" Nothing. I can smell nothing today. Not a thing.
Sarah-Jayne, it's been absolutely lovely having you on the couch and giving us some clarity on what you do and how you do it. And we really appreciate your time.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you so much for having me.
Oh no, we've loved it. And I think if you are in the creative industries and you're struggling with your numbers, get in touch with SARA-JAYNE, because she will help you to understand it in terms of your business. She will story tell it for you, and you'll get it and you'll understand it. And I think that's what us creatives need. You know, we like to be understood, and we like to, a lot of us, we do like to understand the process. So get in touch with SARA-JAYNE. She will make it so much more easy and more pleasant for you than perhaps you've had experience of before. But for now, I'm afraid we'll have to say goodbye. So until next time, we'll see you.